Okay. All right. I was on Apple News on my iPad and I just saw something really ticked me off and now I have to talk about it. Ugh. Okay. So someone decided to make a concept for what if the iPad Pro Smart Keyboard sported a trackpad. That way you could have a mouse on your okay. Ugh. 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 Listen, that's not how this is gonna work, okay? I get that you want your iPad to compete better with your Surface Pro, but look, that's not how Apple sees tablets. And that's not how Microsoft sees tablets either. Because to Microsoft, the Surface Pro is still considered a laptop. And to me, it's still considered a laptop because you can't use that thing just as a standalone tablet. It's such a bullcrap OS. You need a keyboard and trackpad for it to work. And once you got a keyboard and trackpad, you got a laptop. Here is why Apple will not add a trackpad or a mouse to the iPad. No matter how much you may want that, it's not going to happen. Apple acknowledges that on iOS, an operating system designed for touch interface and nothing else, there are certain benefits to having a touchscreen. Now, of course, there are a ton of benefits to having a point-and-click mouse, just like we do on our MacBooks and iMacs. The operating system, macOS, is drastically different. If you haven't noticed, when we assemble files in a Finder, or when we just drag items onto our desktop, typically we keep them close together. This means that on a point-and-click OS, where you have a trackpad or mouse, you can be very specific about where your pointer is on the display. There's an infinite number of pixels you can click around and different buttons you can interact with. With advanced programs like Adobe Premiere or Adobe After Effects, you have an infinite array of buttons, switches that can be very close together because you have that little point and click. It's meant to be precise, right? When Apple redesigned the computer to be touch-friendly, they acknowledged that when you're interacting with your finger directly onto a touchscreen, you cannot be as precise. When you're on a desktop or a laptop and you're clicking around, your mouse can click between pixels. Just a matter of 5 pixels can give a different command. Apple realized that on the iPhone and iPad, when you tap something on the screen, you're covering a very wide array of space on the display. You cannot be as specific as you can on a laptop or desktop. That's why on an iPad, we have all of our apps spaced apart and all of them are fairly big, about the size of the tip of your finger. They space them out because they know that since you don't have a mouse, the touch interface that the device registers when you tap it can start from anywhere. It can start at the top corner, it can start at the bottom corner, it can start in the center. Whereas on a computer, you have to drag the mouse. It has to travel the distance between the 2 points you want to travel to, unlike a touch interface, which can start anywhere. And both of these methods have pros and cons. Now, Steve Jobs described the iPad as a much more personal device than a laptop, and I do agree with him. What I love about my iPad is the seamless interaction I have between my applications and what I want to see, whether it be media, the news, or if I'm editing a photo. When running the right software, an iPad can be really great at being productive, reading, listening to music. All of that I prefer on a touch interface. Because really, with the operating system optimized correctly, I can be faster and more productive on a touch interface. I can tap a lot quicker than I can move a mouse around. Now, the reason no one is refusing to buy MacBooks and not needing an iMac anymore in favor of an iPad is because an iPad's operating system doesn't have all of these productive features and all of these customizations that a Mac does. This is where Microsoft stepped in and found their core belief audience. When they started unveiling the Surface products, they realized that they could make a tablet because it has a touchscreen, sure, but they quickly realized that they would make more sales if that tablet was literally a laptop. The Surface lineup to me really blurs the lines between what is an iPad and what is a MacBook. Because on the Surface products, anytime I've ever seen someone using one, they are using the keyboard and trackpad, and they're only occasionally touching the display. I'm not saying you never do it, I'm just saying you don't have to. As in, you could get through an entire day with using your Surface Pro without touching the screen. Now, if you don't have to use the touchscreen, I don't consider it a laptop. Because we have laptops out there with touchscreens, so are they tablets too? No. So the difference is you can pull it off. I just don't think you need to do that, and the primary reason they're succeeding so much is because all these third-party software developers can keep designing their apps to work on a desktop and not have to rethink their designs at all because they know that Surface owners have a keyboard and mouse. So a laptop designed app and a tablet designed app don't have to be different. They don't have to distinguish themselves. They don't have to rethink their program. That's why you don't see Adobe Premiere adjusting for a touch interface, because they know, hey, Premiere works on the Surface Pro because you have a keyboard and mouse. Great. Now, a lot of people wouldn't look at that as a con. They're saying, well, that's great. Microsoft found their niche. They can put desktop apps on a tablet. What's the problem? I guess if you have a very unprogressive mindset, that's okay, because all you're really doing now is paying more for a laptop that doesn't hold itself up. Now you have to use a kickstand, and you have a much more fragile, unresponsive keyboard and trackpad that is smaller than what you would have gotten if you just bought a real laptop. It's like, okay, I guess you made a tablet, but no one's using it as a tablet, and no third-party developers have to reformat their applications to work with a tablet-style form. What I'm trying to say is that if third-party developers started adapting their apps to work more friendly with just a touch OS, not a mouse, our high-end iPads that are getting very, very fast and having great battery lives and very capable processors could potentially replace our MacBooks in every form. We could do video editing, audio engineering, code writing even. All the things we do with our laptops could be replaced on our iPad if the third parties would just explore the benefits of having just a touch interface, which means making things a tad more consumer friendly, because on a desktop OS we can put as many options and buttons on the screen as we want, given the user has a point and click. On a tablet we have just a touch interface, which would mean optimizing the apps to be a bit more easier to interact with, and we would be forced to make things customizable but also easy to find. I've credited this app 1,000 times over. I use to make all of my video thumbnails across all of my channels. It's infinitely customizable. You have masking in there, you can install external fonts. Those fonts can have drop shadows, you can have layers, you can change opacity. There's so many options you have with Over, but at the same time, it's really easy to use compared to something on a desktop like Adobe Photoshop. There's tons of options, there's tons of buttons to interact with. It's a little too much and it's hard to learn compared to on an iPad, which you can just start playing around with and then you understand. I would love to see this design concept come to all kinds of different fields in use. 3D modeling, engineering, Illustrator. If they could just consider redesigning their apps to work with just a touchscreen, not a mouse, I think we could see more people who are curious about getting into computers and making things on their own not be so hesitant, because computers can be intimidating as well as advanced programs can be hard to learn. Technology is meant to make our lives easier. And I think when you're optimizing apps for an iPad, you're required to make them easier to understand. And that's what technology is really supposed to do in our lives, make what we do easier. I really want to see that happen to our iPads, to where both our iPads and MacBooks are just as capable, one without a mouse and just a touch interface and one with it. And once they're both capable of doing the same amount of stuff, both professional and just consumer activities, then we can decide which one we want to go with. Some people, of course, will stay with the laptops, and some people might realize this iPad is easier, it's more fluid, and I can actually do things faster when I know what I'm doing. I am now just going to have an iPad for work and no longer need a laptop and desktop. I would love to see that happen, but it's not going to, because Microsoft keeps convincing people that the better tablet has a keyboard and mouse, when in actuality you're just buying a really crappy laptop. I hope I'm making sense. I've probably just confused most of you, but when I bought my iPad Pro, I wasn't intending on buying a MacBook later. I was intending for professional apps to make their way onto my iPad so that I could edit professional video on there. It's capable of editing 3 streams of 4K at once. It's very powerful, but that never happened. iMovie's not good enough, so of course I had to switch to the MacBook to get Adobe products and Final Cut. So please just stop wishing and pretending that if we added a trackpad to our iPad so that the iPad could run macOS or we could have a mouse on iOS, like that would fix things. It really wouldn't. Microsoft is giving you more of the same, and because you're used to the same thing, you've been doing it for years now, it's more familiar and you're okay with it. But at the same time, that's not pushing technology any further. In fact, now you're using a crappy laptop instead of actually having a tablet that is full of third-party optimization, and it's not just a MacBook with a touchscreen. Instead, it's a redesign, a rethinking of what a computer can be. We need to push that demand a lot, because the iPads right now, sales are in decline. And I know there's new ones coming out very soon, but I don't think they're gonna change the game very much. So anyway, that's my little rant on this concept I saw. I hope you guys can understand that computers could really quite develop further if we truly unleashed the power of a touch interface and not just kept asking for the exact same thing we've already had. I don't know. I think it could be cool if done correctly. What are your thoughts on the iPad having a mouse? Let's have a great argument in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.